see beyond the horizon. You can. There's some things that aren't meant to be known.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to the Aero Panel. We're back here at live at Zion Arcade in San Francisco, and today we're talking about advanced techniques. We've got some great players on the couch here, and we're going to be talking about some techniques that we employ to get high scores. So I'm your host, James McGarren, aka Buzzard.
Roger Clark.
Jeff Lloyd, Funga.
So we're going to start off, as we do with every episode, talking about some news and some new things that came up with in the DDR community recently. So there's a couple tournaments that are coming up pretty soon. Once again, we just want to express our appreciation for everybody that's like going out there and starting tournaments now, running tournaments, or just showing your support in general. So first of all, just to remind you again, we talked about it before, but Irvine, California, Dave & Buster's, August 5th. There's going to be a tournament there. They did a really good job running it last time, so I think that should be definitely something that you shouldn't miss, especially if you live in the area. There's also a DDR-A tournament at Dave & Buster's in Orland Park, Illinois, which is hosted by @Alessandro T_B, Alessandro. So if you live in the Midwest or anywhere near Orland Park, you should definitely go check that out. And then follow Alessandro on Twitter for more information about that.
He's a great player, too.
Yeah, great player. Nice guy. Also, there's a Pump It Up Prime 2 tournament run by NorCal World Order, and that's going to be August 19th through 20th at Strikes Unlimited in Rockland, California. That's in the Sacramento area.
Yeah, it's pretty close to here.
Yeah, pretty close to here. So if you're based out of the Bay Area or Northern California, and you play Pump It Up, or if you don't, if you play DDR too, I think you should check it out. Yeah, so again, that's August 19th through the 20th, so that's coming up pretty soon. And then if anybody has any tournaments that you're running or if you've heard of that's coming up soon, let us know. Tweet at us at SF_evolved or post in the chat, and then we'll give you a shout out on the show. Hopefully spread the awareness of it. So that's it for tournaments. We've got some great new content.
It's an exciting time for DDR.
Exciting time for DDR, yeah. July 7th update brought us Renon's Adventure Part 3. So there's a couple new challenge charts. You want to talk about those first? Ishtar?
Sure, yeah. So, well, first I'll go through like how the event works. I mean, it's the culmination of the first two Renon's adventures. So you only had to do it was like baby steps for the first two parts.
Literally baby steps.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was kind of the pun. So you didn't have to you play 3 or so rounds for the first set. It was 8 or so rounds for the second part, and now it's 105 steps to get to each unlock of these 4 songs. So the next 4 extra exclusives are Ishtar, Out of Focus, Neutrino, and then Coastal Catastrophe. And so it is pretty grueling to get through all the steps. But then, of course, you get to the end, you get that challenge chart unlocked as well as the song unlocked for normal play. After that, you get a new map that's 156 steps that takes you all the way up to Endymion, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Were you surprised when you saw that? You thought you were almost there, and then all of a
yeah,
sudden...
well,
they tricked you.
It seems like like, I thought it was going to be just the 4 extra exclusive songs. I didn't think there was going to be any, like, new worlds. It was also weird because it was called, like, World 6, but, like, you'd already been to World 6 because that was, like, Ishtar's world or something, or Start a New Day or something. I think they might have messed that up, but it was a little bit confusing. Like, what's World 6? Am I going back in time? Like, I don't know. There's some lore happening. I don't know.
What's the number?
And apparently, like, when you get to the top, you, like, get this item. It's like item get, and then that lets you, if you have a full heat meter, try Endymion.
Heat meter.
Yeah. So the heat meter thing that hasn't mattered, like the first time I played Ace in July of last year, I was like, what the hell is this, like, this Renon's heat meter thing? Oh,
Yeah,
it looks like...
fills up whenever you're playing.
Yeah, at the end of every round, regardless of how well you do, you just get a block. And then if you have 3 blocks, you get 3 bonus stars to use towards your extra stage. And if you have a full heat meter at 7 blocks, then you get 9 bonus stars, so you can, like, you always get extra stage, basically, guaranteed.
So these are these things that fill up at the end of your session. So after you logged out of e-amusement, and it shows Renon floating in there, and she upgrades, and she gets cooler.
Love to upgrade key.
Yeah.
Just hit that upgrade.
So yeah, these are like your, well, so there's a heat meter which fills up, but then there's also levels. So your heat meter, like, kind of
So
maxes out.
you start at level 1, it resets every day, and then when you hit the 3rd block, you get level 2, and when you get the 7th block, you get level 3. And then that, like, it's only been like, oh, I want to get extra stage stars, so I'll get my heat meter up. That's all that's mattered. And now it's suddenly like, by the way, this heat meter thing is how you clear the final song, and so it's kind of like fills weird, like, plot holes. Like, I don't know if there's, like, it feels weird that there's, like, DDR lore.
Let's talk a little bit more about how to get there. So you're filling up your heat meter, and so you're, like, at extra stage, like, level 4, right?
3.
Or 3.
Yeah.
And then you fill it up, and you get to level 4.
Well, it's like level A.
It's like a 4 that's offset to look like an A.
Yeah, like level. I think it says level A Galactic Strike in the big animation thing. Anyway.
Yeah. So this is like you filled up your heat meter. Then what happens?
Yeah. Then so if you've done those 156 steps after unlocking the 10 extra exclusive songs. Like, the whole screen turns red, like the clouds, like, start zooming at you instead of, like, a nice blue sky.
Pretty
It gets kind of glitchy.
Yeah, it's super fast and it kind of, like, wobbles around a little bit and everything's red, which is really creepy.
Yeah.
And then in the extra exclusive folder is Endymion, which is an 18 on Expert, and the only 18s on Expert have been given 19s on Challenge, so we can sort of, like predict in the future maybe that there might be a 19 or maybe the first 20.
Wow.
So this is like that. Then if you select Endymion, it actually asks you, do you want to use up all of your heat meter to play this song? You have to completely drain your heat meter. You get set right back to 0 blocks as if you just logged in for the first time that day. And that's the chance to play Endymion, and you might fail. You can actually play any of the other easier difficulties as well, but it's like a 13 on Basic, which is the first 13 on Basic that's ever existed. So it's just a really testament to how hard this song is.
Yeah, and what this really means, if this has been a kind of a hard thing to understand, is you have to play all day, and then you get one shot at this song basically all day.
Yeah.
And
well, yeah, like there's ways to build, you obviously can build your heat meter back up again.
You can,
but
if you're at an arcade that you can actually do that.
Yeah. It's once, basically what this means is that you can play Endymion once every 8 rounds. Because you have to have, like at max, you fill up your heat meter, you have to get those 7 rounds, then on the 8th round you can play it, and then it drains it. And you don't get a block after that round. So it's once every 8 rounds, which is brutal. And like, a lot of people are, getting halfway through or getting 20% through and failing, and it's just like, it's the worst feeling in the world because you have to do all this work to get back up to a point where you can try it once more time.
You can't even pick it up where you left off the next day.
So yeah, exactly, yeah. Which is actually different than how, this is similar in themes to how, Replicant Deignition worked in DDR 2014, which we didn't have access to. But that was like max period, same sort of thing, and then the encore extra stage over the period, you had to basically get these orbs, and then you could play max period, and then it used up those orbs. So it was a similar, or medals, or whatever they were called. But so it's a similar structure, but you actually kept your medals day to day in Replicant Deignition. Your heat meter goes away at 2 in the morning, or 3 in the morning in America. And that's it. So there's there's no keeping your progress.
It's
really
crazy that they're basically just making you go to the arcade, which I don't have a problem with.
We're gonna be there anyway.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, the biggest surprise, I thought, the Encore Extra Stage.
Yeah.
So, you played maybe Endymion on like, difficult or basic, because those are already like a 13 and a 15.
Yeah.
Right?
And the beginner's a 9.
And the beginner's a 9. But what reason do I have to try the expert chart?
Yeah, so if you play the expert chart and you get a 950,000 or above, which is AA plus, and you pass the song, I actually failed today with over a 950K and did not get the Encore Extra Stage, so you have to pass, obviously. That's probably obvious, but then you get to try, it says try Encore Extra Stage, and the final song is a song called Ace for Aces. It's by Tag and U1, and it is Attack Perfect Full Combo, like Over the Period was back in DDR 2014, and Love is the Power on DDR X3. So getting anything other than a Marvelous or a Perfect will immediately fail you.
Yeah.
So talk about having one shot for a song.
Yeah.
So you have one shot to pass Endymion. Finally, you pass it.
And then you're tired as hell after playing an 18 that's one of the hardest 18s, I think.
And so now you have this song where you have to get a perfect full combo.
Yes.
Really, they're just codifying what DDR players have been doing all along anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want the greats. It's basically a failure anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk more about Ace for Aces. So it's kind of like the finale song, I would say.
It's got to
probably
be.
for
I mean,
DDR Ace.
if there was any doubt about this being like the final update, there's a possibility that we'll get a new crossover or two, or I don't think there's going to be any new event, like DDR specific.
Yeah.
But yeah, because it's just like, this is a tribute song, just like Over the Period was in 2014.
Yeah, there's like the background videos, like an anime.
Oh yeah, it's actually a staff roll. It's the credits of the game.
Nice.
So that seems to imply that this is the last thing.
Yeah. So what's the song like? You're playing it on difficult, right?
Yeah. So when you pass Endymion on expert, you actually play on difficult for Ace of Aces. It's a 13. We know that. And today I got to step 166 and then failed. And so that's currently the farthest that anyone's gotten. I know that Fefems is actually going to be trying it tonight. It's like the morning in Korea right now, and then so towards the evening.
So sometime in the middle of the night.
Yeah, Fefems will be attempting to pass Endymion and get farther in.
I've been seeing him post some scores lately. It's nice to see him back in the game.
Yeah, I think this has brought him back for a little bit. So yeah, we haven't seen as of this episode, we haven't seen the full chart yet.
I think that's really cool. I think it's neat that like even the best players are taking cracks at it, and still nobody's seen the full chart.
Yeah, it's
a little bit of mystery.
It sucks because like I can pass Endymion like once every 2 or 3 tries, so I basically get like 0 or 1 tries at Ace for Aces every day. And there's so many gimmicks so far. Like there's already been like this 800 BPM speed up into a stop, and then there's a slowdown, and then today I thought there was going to be a speed up after the slowdown, but it still was slow, and I failed again.
So they really designed it to be like not something you do on your first shot.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool because they planned this out knowing that only the best players would be playing this, and only the best players would be trying this.
Yeah.
So basically, they're kind of speaking directly to you.
Yeah.
Really, they're kind of just talking directly to the best players, and I think it's very sentimental.
Yeah.
I really like that about that.
Yeah. So and to fill people in on what might happen in the future, so we don't know actually. Like Over the Period on difficult was never passed during the Attack Perfect Full Combo stage.
That's believable.
Yes, it was. I mean,
it's a pretty hard
that
chart.
beginning, right? What happened was they eventually relaxed the requirements, and like you were able to play the lower difficulties, and that's when someone first got. It's actually a guy named Silverhawk who got the first clear, I believe, on Over the Period beginner. So once the conditions were relaxed, he was able to play it on beginner, and then we actually got to see the full like skeleton of the chart.
Yeah.
And then from there, people were able to start, and I think they actually just released the expert and the challenge just at once, and they were just like, here, go nuts. So I'm not entirely sure about the timeline, but so we don't know when that will happen. Presumably that will happen. I don't know if they relaxed it because no one passed it. So I'm really for me personally, it's a really cool thing to try to pass it on difficult before they relax the conditions, because I want to sort of be the first person to pass it, and Like,
maybe they designed the new song to be less hard.
I mean, it was like over the period was a 15,
Yeah.
and a hard 15 is one of the hardest 15s. I think people all kind of agree on that. It doesn't. There's nothing too technically challenging in Ace for Aces so far. It's just getting accustomed to the gimmicks, which we're learning like piece by piece. And oh yeah, it's really late. If anyone does try it, it's really late, especially after the 800 BPM speed up. So yeah, but it'll be really interesting to see if anything happens. Like, if you clear Ace for Aces on difficult, do you get access to Endymion Challenge, or does it unlock Ace for Aces on Expert? Because we know there's an Expert chart that's a 15. But I'm like,
but again, nobody's seen it.
Yeah. So we don't know.
It was kind of leaked, actually, right? Because we saw it on the site.
Yeah, basically, like I logged into the EMU's web portal, and like they just had the difficulties for Ace of Aces listed as like you can look at your scores through the web UI.
Yeah.
So we know it's a 15, so maybe it unlocks Ace for Aces and Endymion for normal play, and you get all the charts. Wouldn't that be cool? And then we could see, or like, I don't know. We don't know because we don't have a precedent for what happened in 2014.
Yeah.
So I really just want, I'm like racing myself almost because I want to see, like, is there new content? Is there extra charts? Can I try something, before anyone else?
And it's also great to not know.
Yeah, exactly. It's the mystery of it all.
Yeah.
You talking about the community sort of effort?
Oh yeah. So there's a lot of people in the community that are trying to that are going at it right now. So I was the first person to show that the Encore Extra Stage existed. This guy named Hoshikechi was also playing Endymion. He was the first person to pass Endymion, but he didn't. There's some weirdness about you actually need to have Endymion unlocked, finish the last part of Renon's adventure to qualify for Encore Extra Stage. So if you actually piggyback off someone else who has Endymion unlocked, even if you pass it, if you don't have access to Endymion, you can't play Ace for Aces.
Oh man.
So he passed it and was like, cool, now we know what the chart looks like. And it was like, that's it. That's nothing else. But, spoiler alert, when I passed it, I got to try Ace for Aces. And then we figured out, there's actually also a score requirement. Someone got a 923 on it and did get Ace for Aces. So there's all these pieces that were sort of fitting together. So people from Taiwan and people from Japan and Korea and the US are all sort of collaborating together and trying to figure out, get a little bit farther in the chart and figure out what all the rules are to get there.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
It's cool to see everybody kind of collaborating like that.
Yeah.
And sharing knowledge.
It's very much like KAC. It felt like we're all sort of competing together.
Yeah.
And right now we're all just trying to build up that knowledge and get to I think everyone wants to see this cleared without the requirements being relaxed.
Yeah, I got a push notification the other day when Jeff had just put up a new video of getting a couple more steps into it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, it's time to look at this and see what new steps there are. In
Yeah,
Ace for
exactly.
Aces.
So yeah, speaking of that, have you guys gotten to Endymion or Ace for Aces? You should tweet us a picture or something, and or post in the chat. Let us know what you thought of the chart and whatnot.
How many people have passed Endymion?
5 or 6.
I imagine a lot of people got to Endymion at least.
No, I think people are still grinding away at it.
I feel like I play a lot, and I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
I don't even have it all the new content unlocked.
Yeah. It just takes a long time because you can only get steps on your extra stage, and 12 steps at a time. There's no bonus for first clears and stuff like in Babylon's Adventure. So it's pretty brutal. I think from the start of Renon's Adventure to the first time you can play Endymion, it's exactly 50 credits. If you always get to extra stage and you always AAA your extra stage song.
Damn.
All right, let's move on because we have a lot of stuff to talk about tonight.
Definitely.
So yeah, the main topic of this evening is we're talking all about advanced techniques for DDR. So this is way beyond crossovers or any of that kind of stuff. So we're going into some if you're actually trying to get to Endymion or if you're trying to pass some of the 16s and 17s, this is what we're talking about tonight.
I think we might also talk about crossovers in a future episode.
Yeah,
they're not trivial.
Yeah,
They're definitely not trivial. Yeah,
they're hard.
So we spent a little bit of time and we actually collected some videos a couple nights ago of Jeff performing some of these techniques. So we're going to be switching kind of back and forth from us to some videos that we prepared. We also got some slow-mo videos too, so you can really see it in action. But we're going to start off. Oh, actually, before we start off, I just wanted to ask the audience too if there are any advanced techniques that you'd like to share with us, or if you want us to talk about it a little bit more, post in the chat, tweet at us at SF_evolved, and then we'll make sure to bring it up. But I thought before the audience comes in, I thought we'd talk about streaming first.
Yeah.
So, in case anybody doesn't know what a stream is just a long sequence of notes, usually like 16th notes or 8th notes if the BPM is doubled, where you have to hit them in order, and typically there's no breaks between it, so it's like a real like fast run. So actually, you want to start off, Jeff?
Yeah, sure. So I think we have, not sure if it's being displayed right now, but we have a picture of like the inside of a DDR era, which I think is important to know. Sort of, it gives you context as to where you're supposed to be stepping. So notice that there are 4 sensors each on the edge of the panel. So when you're thinking about streaming, you really want to be focusing your energy on the insides of the panel. It's actually where a sensor is. So a lot of I think when I started out playing, I just assumed that you tried to hit the center of the panel.
Which is actually, if you could see from the picture that the center of the panel would be like the least sensitive
part.
part.
It's the farthest away from a sensor.
Farthest away from any of the sensors.
So when you're thinking about your technique, it's really important to try to keep to that inner circle, like basically as close to that inside sensor as possible. That's like sort of how you optimize for streaming. That's kind of the basics of it. But so for me, for streaming, what I've learned is, I hold the bar. If you're not holding the bar, you're going to have to really have that upper body strength and like that core strength to keep your body sort of stable. But the way I think of it is I'm keeping my torso and everything up like as stable as possible. And I'm sort of like letting my feet do the moving from there. I'm not trying, because I think a lot of people they sort of let loose above their body, and you're actually exerting a lot of energy, and it's a waste at a certain point.
It's more moving parts. You want to have the moving parts being your legs and everything else kind of in place.
Exactly.
So actually, before we move on, I want to bring up a question from the audience. We got something from Zanzibar who's asking about the inside of the pad.
Yeah.
And sort of like pad mods and stuff like that. So he says, do you guys think that the stock foam on the L brackets is enough for a long run? Can heavily modded pads create bad or improper technique? So just in case anybody's not aware, the foam on the pads, you saw it in the picture before, is a common mod that people do to the inside of the pads. You can see here it's on the black tape and the red tape on the bottom. It's a common mod that people do to their machines to kind of just put more stuff between the L bracket, which is the thing that the foam is sitting on top of, and the sensor, which is what the L bracket is on top of.
Yeah, it's mainly trying to raise the panel up a little bit.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't feel like so much of a crevice, like you just sort of sink down into the pads, because the closer your feet are to that center, if you're on the center panel often and you're kind of towing that line, you want there to be the minimal distance between the center panel and the panel you're trying to hit. So in response to his question, I think the stock foam that exists, and a lot of people put extra foam on top, I think it's actually fine. I think we're seeing with the DDR Ace cabinets that after a year or 6 months or whatever of constant play, at least in the Bay Area, it feels like that for a lot of the machines. It's actually totally it hasn't been an issue so far. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people say that the foam sort of condenses over time, and so over time you have to add more foam, which then condenses and you replace it with new foam. I don't think it actually matters too much. It definitely matters, especially for in the groove and other areas. It might matter more, but especially for DDR, and especially at this stage, I don't think that it's a huge deal. I think a lot of it is just going to come down to more regular pad maintenance, cleaning dirt out of sensors and replacing bad sensors. I think makes more of a difference than the actual squishiness of the foam that's being used.
Yeah. So actually, Sappy on Twitter asked us, what's the best way to position yourself for a Scooby? Do you turn sideways with one hand on the bar, or do you keep yourself centered?
I would like to talk about this more with a crossover section. I think so this is Advanced Techniques Part 1, in my opinion. We should definitely go into more of them, especially if you guys like this sort of tutorial style content, or at least discussing higher level things. For Scooby, I keep both my hands on the bar. I've seen other people do it where they take one hand off. I'm not very good at them. Don't listen to me that much.
So in case you're not familiar, a Scooby is kind of like a run where you face the side.
Yeah.
Like an
So,
Afro-Nova run,
it's
but
like an
16th
Afro-Nova
notes.
run. It's what the kids are calling the Afro-Nova run these days. Back in my day, we called it the Afro.
Fast Afro.
It's defined by being, you look like Scooby-Doo
Yeah.
when you have to like go from side to side like that. If you remember the old cartoons, that's kind of where it came
Yeah,
from.
so we might talk about that a little bit more in a future episode.
Yeah.
So that's definitely like another advanced technique, but
That's about as advanced as it gets, I think.
Yeah.
so yeah, back on the topic of streaming, I had a couple of advice too. I typically try to hit hard, and I try to avoid using my toes. I know Jeff says that he uses his toes for the up arrow, but personally, I think I like to adopt the technique of kind of like trying to hit every arrow like the down arrow. So that's sort of like using the power points of your foot. There's like the balls of your feet on the front, and then your heel on the back. And so when you're going through a run, in order for like the best accuracy, I would say like try to put as much power into the panel as you can. It's exhausting, and it definitely takes some stamina training, but that's something that's helped me in the past. And then Roger, what do you
also
think?
I think bar technique is pretty important for streaming too. Like Jeff was saying, keeping your upper body kind of in place and not moving around. But also I feel like I got a lot better at streaming at 16th note runs when I put even more of my body weight onto the bar and kind of used the bar to hold myself up so that my feet are kind of hovering over the pad. Because the more of your weight that's on your feet, the harder it is to lift them.
Yeah,
It's true.
You know.
So I think we have a thing on Twitter. If you
Yeah,
wanna-
so we're going to go into so Max from Twitter asked a question. So candles are really difficult for me to execute, and I'm not sure if it's a question of me not having the foot speed yet, or if it's that he's not doing them properly in the first place. So what do you recommend when trying to hit patterns like this? And then we have a visual here from I'm So Happy.
Yeah, and I would actually, this is the perfect transition to get into our first video. Which
It's great that you asked this, Max, because we actually prepared.
Yeah, so when I think of something that's really good to help start like learning about streaming, I'm So Happy is one of them.
Yeah.
Because these what are known as candle runs are incredibly important for like just because streams are going to have like sometimes streams you sort of like are localized to 2 arrows at a time and then you sort of move around. But can we get the video up? Oh, we got the video. Okay, great. So this is me playing I'm So Happy. So we're going to have a lot of these style vids of sort of showing how I'm performing a certain technique. So when we get to the candle run in a bit, I'll try to elaborate more on it. But it is very similar to what James is saying of like using the power points of your foot. So I consider like the balls of my feet still my toes, or like it's not quite the same, but you're not using your heel for the up arrow. Like so basically in that stream, and luckily this is on YouTube, so you can go back and sort of look at it in detail if you want. But I'm trying to basically at every point my heel is on the down arrow, the balls of my feet are on the up arrow, kind of like at the sensor. And sort of the sides of my foot, or kind of my whole foot, are on the left and right arrows. Mm-hmm. And I'm using the bar extensively here to sort of maintain my weight, like Roger said. Like I think that's a great way to put it. The more weight you have on the bar, the less weight you have to take off of an arrow to move to another one. Mm-hmm. So it's especially important in longer runs that we consider streams. To like, I'm sort of the way I try to describe it to people was like sit on the down arrow.
Yeah.
Like normally I'm just sort of like propped up by the bar, but I actually sort of bend my arms and
Yeah, you can see that happening here.
like I'm actually bending, like my elbows are making more of a right angle than they were. They're getting closer to 90 degrees, and I'm really focusing on like keeping my torso rigid and moving my feet around. And we have a couple other videos we can check out. I think the next one is Koisuru, or Love is a Space War. Nothing too hard in this. These are just sort of examples that I wanted to run through. We have a few examples for each sort of section that we have. And the goal is we sort of like talk over it and sort of discuss what's going on. This is nothing too complicated, at least at the offset. But it gets a little bit, like that run is a little bit complex. some of the jumps are. I mean, this is it really starts to like ramp up right around here.
This kind of reminds me too of another thing that I want to mention that helps me, which is that when you start a run, make sure that you're timing that first arrow correctly. So one of the things that I often do is I'll like read the run that's coming up, and I'll kind of panic a little bit, and I'll codify in my head sort of like what to do with my feet, and then I'll like execute it way too early or way too late. And so what I'm trying to do now instead is sort of like really pay attention to the timing of the first arrow into the run.
Yeah.
So if it's a whole note, like it is sort of in these like the left down, or the left down runs into the jump, I'll look at that whole note and I'll be like, hit that whole note on time.
Yeah.
And then your brain kind of just automatically knows what to do after that, so you don't have to worry about screwing up the rest of the run.
Yeah.
Also, using the whole notes, the red notes, as the anchor for keeping your timing going. Like whenever you're doing a run, you'll see it's like it's alternating between red, blue, and yellow. And if you concentrate on the whole notes and make sure that you get those, it helps counting while you're doing it.
So we also have Come to Life Challenge too next.
Yeah.
So this is definitely a good one to talk about. A lot of people are attempting this chart, I think. So this is a slow-mo video of Jeff attempting the run in Come to Life.
I think we actually have like most of this video, so we can just we have a lot of time here if we want to talk about this. But to your point, James, I think it's very important. Keeping, like, for me especially, when you see a run, it can look intimidating at the offset. You're sort of like prepping like, oh man, my feet can't move that fast, or oh, I'm already exhausted. Like, there's no way I can do that.
Yeah, that happens to me.
And for me, I just rush things. I get so tired that I just rush everything. And so it's really important, like James said, to sort of like take it piece by piece, slow down in your brain, and think like, this is just, this is the same pattern I did earlier. It's just.
Yeah, so I'm actually noticing in your slow-mo video too that you have a little bit of air that you kind of give your feet right before the run, and I think it's probably to do exactly that, just to kind of make sure that you get the timing right.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a run, your feet are not going as high from the pads, but typically, I know for me at least, like when I'm trying to do my best with timing, I'm trying to like move my feet in a way that when they meet the pad, that's going to be exactly on time.
Yeah.
You can kind of see that in the slow mo, which I think is cool.
It's Come to Life. Unfortunately, there's a lot of this part in the middle that there's not too much streaming action, but it is. This is actually a very good song that I would recommend for learning how to stream. So I think one of the goals with this thing we're doing is recommend songs. Like, if you want to get good at streams, what should you play?
Yeah, the streams here are pretty straightforward. There's nothing in here that's that crazy. There's some crossovers, but even if all you were doing was practicing the first run in the song, which is this one really big, long 16th note run, and if you quit after that, that's still really good practice for lots of songs.
I think songs like Nagisa no Kawakuma Lovely Radio, that's a 15. If you're breaking into 15s, that's a really good streaming song. It's got a lot of streams at 190. Stuff like Endorphin has a lot of streams. Even at just 160. So if you're really breaking into that like 15 plus range, there's a lot of different, like, stay away from the gimmicky charts, because the gimmicky charts are rated that high because they are gimmicky. And usually, like, songs that Come to Life, which have, like 2 slowdowns or something, like a stop, they're not actually that gimmicky. It's all in the like the runs and the streams and the technique that you need. So focus on those instead. So you can see this is just another run here.
So in the chat, lots of people are talking about holding the bar, techniques for holding the bar. Actually, some people prefer not to hold the bar. So Legend of Cha was asking if you have any advice for people who are trying to get good at streaming and don't wish to hold on to the bar.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't call myself an expert on this, but you're sort of trying to. I think you're still trying to keep your center of mass and everything kind of over the center panel. Like, if you're sort of like leaning towards the left or to the right or up or back, like, because that kind of is a tendency when you're moving your legs that way. Then you're gonna have, like, if you have to hit a left arrow and you're kind of leaning to the left, and then you have to hit a right arrow, you have to go all the way over to the right, and incrementally those things don't matter that much. But when you put them all together, like over the course of a song, that is like unsustainable. You're gonna run out of energy, and you're actually not gonna be able to make it in time in some cases to that other arrow. So if you can sort of like, it's the same sort of style of keeping your body rigid, your torso up, but you need to sort of be hovering over the center panel, I would say.
Yeah, really, it's hard to remember this while you're playing DDR, but it's really important that you have to stand up.
Yeah.
You know, like especially if you're doing no bar, you got to stand up. Make sure that you're not like hunching too much. Same thing with the bar. Like you just anytime you feel your body kind of like slouching equals you're gonna screw up.
Yeah.
So no slouching.
It's
pretty true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slouching is great. Yeah. So my personal advice, actually, I think that if you're interested in learning how to get good at streaming without the bar, Ringo on YouTube.
Oh yeah, look at Ringo.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion.
So that's
He's going crazy.
Yeah, so he's a Japanese player, right?
Yeah.
He's a Japanese player who I thought the most impressive video would probably be his Healing D-Vision video, which he did no bar. And you'll notice he's got a very interesting technique where he's definitely paying attention to his center of mass. And yeah, so actually we might have a video of Ringo playing.
Well, I guess he's using the bar in this
He's
video.
using the bar in this one, actually.
So
now-
Ringo actually had he did this challenge to himself of like getting he wanted to AAA every 18 no
Yeah.
bar, and he actually did it. The last song he did was 9 IX, and
here
Oh
we
yeah,
have,
so this looks a little bit like this is from back in what, X2? Wow.
This is here's Fascination Max. Go full screen here, Charles. There we go. So one of the things I noticed about Ringo is that you'll notice that he's definitely keeping the upper part of his body facing the machine at all times. He's using his arms a lot for balance.
Yeah.
And he also kind of like when he gets into the runs, you can see by his head moving that he's squatting down a lot lower than he normally does.
Yeah.
Like his head moves a lot lower down during the runs. Yeah, I think he's a great example. Check out check out Ringo's videos on YouTube.
he's locker_roll on Twitter. Follow him there. He posts a lot of videos on Twitter, especially his most recent ones where he was doing like crazy stuff like Healing Division no bar.
Yeah.
Over the period.
Getting over the period no bar. Like a lot of this stuff is like seriously very impressive.
Yeah.
He's a great no bar player. So, but a lot of the advice that we're talking about, if we sort of look at his technique, kind of does carry over whether or not you're using the bar.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks for asking, though. It's good to get to talk about people who don't want to play with the bar too.
For sure.
JJK on Twitter asked. He said during runs he instinctively dips low and spreads away from the center panel on fast streams, even when he tries not to. Do you have any advice for him?
It's hard. I mean, I think dipping low is okay.
Dipping low is good,
You don't want to
yeah.
go down too far, but you still like I said, like when I'm streaming something, I sort of like I'm hunched down a little bit, like my elbows sort of turn more into right angles, and
But definitely, you can tell from the videos that we took that it's not that much.
yeah, it's. I think it's a trap to like go. You won't want to like go too far down, obviously. But it is just maybe it's because of the way that you're like sort of like your whole torso is in a different position if you're crouching down a little bit. So maybe that's like skewing JJK's like positional awareness, if that makes sense. And so maybe just getting used to crouching down that low and maybe try playing everything like that. And just like as if a 16th run were always about to come up.
Yeah.
Just like sort of stay in that position and focus on keeping your basically make sure you're only hitting the inside sensors. I think a lot of advice comes down to like trying it out on things that are easier and working your way up to things that are harder. It's really good to isolate problems and hone technique on one specific thing rather than, okay, I'm going to practice streaming by playing Egoism 440. Like, even though there's a lot of streams in it and it is a great song to practice, if you're really trying to like worry about your form, you may want to start with a 15 that has a lot of streams. Make sure you nail that every time and then work your way up.
Okay, yeah, so let's move on to the next advanced technique that we want to talk about, foot switches.
Yes.
So first, do you want to talk about what foot switches are?
Yes.
For people who aren't aware.
So foot switches are sometimes they're optional. They're kind of a newer thing. I think ITG really introduced them, and they've sort of taken off and then kind of been adopted by a lot of DDR charts. So basically, a foot switch is, let's say that you have a pattern that's like left, down, down, right. You could like either cross that over, or you could like double step it and use the same foot 3 times. But anytime you're using your foot 3 times in a row, you should be asking yourself the question of like, is this a foot switch?
Yeah, in fact, actually, this is something I often tell new players, because new players often tend to like use the same foot for like left and down and the same foot for up and right.
Yeah.
And so the thing I tell new players is like focus on alternating feet at all times.
Yeah.
This is like a really basic technique, I think, that's very important to master.
Yeah.
And you always see the good players are alternating feet. That's what the point of a crossover is.
Yeah.
And the foot switches are a new, kind of more advanced way of doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like it's pretty simple to have like left, down, up, right, and it's like, okay, don't do like left foot, right foot, alternate. But then you come up with a new pattern that's like left, down, right, and it's not really that instinctive to switch the foot that you're using to go to the right arrow. So
actually, we should bring up this video because this is perfectly illustrating what we're talking about.
It's definitely doing it right now.
exactly. So this is a slow-mo video. So again, trying to show how they look. So this is like up, left, down, up, left, down. It may look like you have to use the same foot a bunch of times, but you actually don't have to. You just, you switch your foot at the down arrow. So this is Summer Fantasy Darwin Remix, which a 13 on expert, pretty good getting started off in foot switches, understanding what patterns look like. For me, the hardest part about starting with foot switching, when I had never encountered that in DDR before, was a lot about pattern recognition. And just this pattern that's coming up, oh, that's a foot switch.
Yeah.
So things like up, down, up, left, down, or it turns into like, right, up, down, like it's switching between a couple different kinds. So being able to identify those, and then the harder part is the technique.
Yeah.
So basically, this is probably obvious to everyone, but I'll be explicit about it. If you have, this is actually different than other music games, but if you have one sensor held down and you try to hit another sensor on DDR, it does not register. So that's why stuck panels are such a problem. So a common problem with foot switching is not lifting your first foot up from the arrow and trying to hit the same arrow again.
Yeah, this happens to me all the time.
And so you'll actually miss for the second part of that foot switch, which is not what you want. So a key part, and you can sort of see with the pad lights that we've got in this video, that I'm sort of like lifting up my heel on the down arrow at every point before I use my next heel to apply that pressure. So if I didn't, then I would be, getting those misses. So this is a pretty basic song. If you actually Celebrate Night Euro Transmix, I don't think it was intentional.
It was definitely intentional.
It's super fun to do with
Yeah.
foot switching. I'd never done it with foot switching before. But so go to the Max 2 folder and try Celebrate Night again.
There's a couple other songs if you don't have access to DDR Ace and you just have Extreme. There's also Can't Stop Falling in Love Speed Mix, which
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
When
I always forget
back in
about
the
that.
day, I foot switched that, and
It helps with timing.
you can do it.
Yeah.
Same thing with Era and
Oh, yeah,
Stelmix.
yeah.
It's in there.
Holic does it too.
Holic, there's a couple in Superstar from Nonstop Megamix.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think those are a little bit more advanced, but
Yeah.
So Orion, I guess.
There is sort of a difference between doing like kind of patterns that flow, I guess I'll say. Like in Summer Fantasy, you can see here, these patterns are very flowy. Like they're meant to be fluid runs, whereas you have like when you have giant jack sections like
Exactly.
in Can't Stop Falling in Love Speed Mix, those are actually it's just a question of whether or not you wanted to like hit them all with one foot.
you could just hit it all with one foot, and I think most people do.
Yeah. So there is kind of a separate. There's two classes of foot switches. Ones that sort of flow, and ones that are more jack based. So it's an interesting distinction. Very good point.
Yeah, so we have a couple of other charts that we want to show you. So also Rising Firehawk Expert.
Yeah. So this is a really fun one that so new to DDR Ace, but and this shows kind of coming in and out of 16th notes, and also foot switches on the up arrow. So foot switches on the up arrow actually always give me grief because I have a hard time applying just enough pressure to hit it, but not enough that I can't lift up quickly enough to get off of it for the other foot.
Yeah.
So it is a technique that that definitely for the up arrow, like the down arrow is the easiest one. If you can practice on the down arrow, get that down, and then work on the up arrow from there.
Yeah, so my advice too for the up arrow, because I think the down arrow is much easier to do foot switches on than the up arrow. But yeah, for the up arrow, kind of like make sure that sort of the same thing again, like the power, putting power into the panel. Also, use the dead panel as like put your heel on the dead panel and make sure that only half of your foot is going on the up arrow.
Yeah.
If your whole foot is on the up arrow, it's really likely that you're gonna start getting misses.
Yeah.
And positioning your feet is really important for doing them on the side, like in da-da-da.
Which we'll show in a bit.
Yeah. So before we get to da-da-da, we have also Spanish Snowy Dance, Expert.
Yeah, so this is an example where it's a little bit faster. So the other ones were sort of optional. Like Summer Fantasy, you could double step it. Rising Firehawk, you could also double step it pretty easily. This is 12th notes at 180, which are much faster, and it's in slow-mo right now, so it doesn't look that fast.
This is similar to Windy Fairy.
Yeah,
too.
Windy Fairy does the same thing at the very end, but here you can see that these are actually runs, and if you wanted to try to use one foot for this, you're probably going to have a bad time.
You're going to get goods.
Yeah, or misses, probably, because you're basically going to be using 1 foot for 3 consecutive 12th notes at 180, which is like a 24th run.
Yeah, I
at
love
180.
this part of the chart because, like, if you did try to use 1 foot for this, you would just get all twisted up.
Yeah, exactly. So, like here, you can really, and sometimes it being faster is helpful.
Yeah, because it forces you to do it.
You do have to get off of it faster because there's other notes that are around there. You got to get off and start moving to another one. So yeah, like Spanish Snowy Dance is a pretty good example, and Windy Fairy is also another good.
And so
candidate.
finally, we want to show da-da-da, Tenda, that's what I like to call it, Challenge, the new chart. So this one is kind of like an extreme example, I would say. It's similar to Can't Stop Falling in Love Speedy Mix, where it's consecutive notes on one side, so you're not actually switching over to another arrow. You're just keeping 2 feet on one arrow.
Exactly.
And so actually, Jeff's technique here is really great. You can see that in the slow-mo video that half of his foot, he's using his heels to hit the left and right arrow, which is pretty unusual. And half of his foot is hitting the dead panel. So that's back to what we were saying about making sure to have half of your foot on the dead panel. And use those power zones.
And there was the Max 300 style up-down foot switches.
So I love da-da-da so much. It's one of my favorite charts in DDR, if not my favorite chart. And because it throws like so many crazy things at you that I sort of had to reevaluate like how I do things like jacks and how to do a side foot switch. Like there's never been a chart that requires you really to do a side foot switch like this. I mean, you could use 1 foot. I don't recommend it. But like James is saying, I'm basically using just my heel for those side foot switches. They're actually very similar to down in that sense. You really can't use your heel too much for the up arrow, though I will say in Paranoia Revolution, Expert, it has like 14 up arrows in a row, and I actually, every time as that section comes up, I look down, I put my foot on the
metal?
The metal on the forward part of the, like way up on the
That's
top
a
part of the pad. It is. It's like the only time I ever have to do that. But it's a similar concept where basically like your heel is just more consistent than your toes for foot switching. So anytime you can sort of coerce the chart into getting to your heels, that's what you want to do. So that's why I'm performing those foot switches using the sort of top 2 dead panels as my sort of center panel equivalent for the side arrows.
Yeah.
You had mentioned doing an extra step after each.
Oh yeah, that's also something that I think helps with, specifically with da-da-da. I was talking to Andy 457 about this, and he was. If you're ever having trouble where it feels like the last arrow you get a miss on, like in a long stream like this, it's probably because like your second to last foot sort of rests because it's done. Like it doesn't have to do anything more, so you sort of just rest it, and it's very easy to just like stop, and then. But too bad, it's like it's already on the arrow, so you get a miss on the very last step of a jack section like this. So one thing I recommended to him was go step, which we'll talk about in a second. Go step an arrow right after. That way, you sort of are forcing your foot to get off that arrow. You don't get any misses. You just need to make that call of whether or not you have enough time. And something like da-da-da, it's actually pretty hard in certain circumstances to both
like
get
right
to the
there.
other side. Yeah, exactly. On those 4s, it's a little bit harder. But you might also just decide that for the 4s, you're going to use 1 foot. and for the longer sections, maybe use both feet. So you
Yeah.
can sort of mix and match. Like I've seen players do the foot switches for the first part of this for da da da, and then for like the max 300 section, just using one foot.
That's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
That's what I do for Tenda.
An important part of all these techniques that we're describing is find whatever works for you.
Yeah, it's personal. It's definitely very personal.
This is like a lot of stuff that I've learned over time, but I compare my style of play with I am Chris for Life's, or Kaze573 Hudson's. We all have very different ways of playing and interpreting different patterns. So a lot of it does come down to what you're most comfortable with. And instead of trying to shoehorn yourself into like, oh, this pro player does it, so I'm going to do it this way, try to figure out if that actually does work for you.
I get the feeling that I am Chris for Life would not foot switch these parts. Am I right?
I'm not sure. We should ask him.
Yeah. Hey, if you're watching, Chris, let us know.
Yeah, but just find whatever works for you.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to ghost stepping. So,
Yeah.
So ghost stepping is kind of like if you, if there's a stream kind of in a chart and there's you're having difficulty like timing odd notes. Ghost stepping is adding kind of like phantom arrows, like imaginary arrows, to sort of complete the timing.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a stream, even if it's just 2/8 notes, go ahead and make the 2/8 notes 3/8 notes.
Yeah, so maybe let's jump right into an example just to show it. So we have a video of Squeeze here, which I personally requested that we make this one because this is one that I ghost step all the time, and I
Yeah.
actually don't typically ghost step. But this is a part of the song, if you've never played Squeeze before, where it slows down. And so I feel like, especially with slow parts of songs, ghost stepping is really important.
Yeah.
But you'll see Jeff here is using the freeze, the down arrow freeze, to once again alternate feet.
Yeah.
And add notes. So you want to talk about? You mentioned something too about special things about the freeze arrow, bouncing on the freeze.
Yeah. You're sort of it's fun. It's kind of like exploiting the game engine to me, where freeze arrows obviously give you a little bit of leeway before they start before you drop them, so you can bounce on freezes to that's like kind of the general case of ghost stepping is bouncing on freezes. Like if you have a left-right hold and it's like springing you into another section of the song, if you just sort of bounce on it or like alternate feet, whatever you want to do, that's ghost stepping. It's a very simple form, but it helps you. You want to be able to keep that beat. Sometimes you can look towards the targets and try to make sure that when you're sort of bouncing on the arrows, the other targets are flashing in time. So you can sort of set yourself up something like V, a classic chart where you just have like a big a piano section, or I guess it's violins, right? You're sort of bouncing on that, waiting for the next notes to start. You don't want to just be kind of anticipating and waiting and waiting and waiting and then trying to snipe that arrow just off the bat. You want to sort of just be keeping the beat.
So you could see the down arrow, the light in the down arrow turning off as Jeff is doing
Yeah,
this.
and I don't drop this freeze. This isn't actually like this is like a recreation of the chart with my movement. But so you don't see the freeze bouncing in the video, but you can see that I'm lifting it up. And what is an important thing to note is the sort of idea of completing awkward sections. So in Squeeze, hitting da 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 is a lot more challenging than da 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 da. That's just more it matches more of the downbeat. You want to get as many sort of downbeat parts as you can into a chart. So I'm actually hitting 2 arrows on the down arrow here to sort of complete the 16th chain, where that 16th note is sort of flying out in the open, and I'm trying to complete it by adding 2 notes, 1 note above it and 1 note below it, to sort of keep the rhythm a little bit easier. A better, a more advanced example is something like Music in the Rhythm, which is the next video that we have.
One.
So here, this is full speed. You can sort of just see my technique for this. But so it goes da 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 da, and that's just awkward as hell. Those 2 16ths. If you're not really I'm not even good at sniping them myself, and I play this game a lot. So it's very easy to get perfects or greats or goods or anything on those. But if you think about the rhythm as something like da 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 da. See now, with the addition of those 2 extra notes, you're actually something that you're adding more downbeats, more eighth notes.
You're
and
almost
quarter
turning
notes.
it into an easier pattern, I would say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm basically bouncing on that freeze again and doing da 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 da. Now the challenge here, whenever you're ghost stepping, you do have to make sure that you're not. You're actually interrupting the flow of the chart when you ghost step. You're adding notes where they don't belong. So a very common problem is not being prepared for something that comes up right after it. So if you actually watch my footwork in this, I'm actually correcting like at every point. So like I'm actually doing a lot more double stepping here. If I weren't gonna go step at all, I would not have to double step that much. But because I'm adding all these extra notes, I do have to double step much more than I would before. So that's a trade-off that you're gonna have to start thinking about. I could try to go step this part, but then I really have to up my double stepping game, and maybe it's too fast and I'm not gonna be able to.
Yeah.
So there definitely is a trade-off there, but I think like for me, double stepping is easier than trying to snipe random 16ths in a chart.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I try to add them whenever possible.
So Roger, you mentioned something really good too about using the dead panels or the center panel when appropriate.
Yeah, so, with shock arrows, you often use the center panel to avoid them, or mines if you're playing ITG. And I use the center panel a lot when I'm completing sections to add ghost notes where I'm not quite sure where to step. Like, sometimes it's, you look at a chart and you want to add some notes, but maybe if I add a note on right, I'm not going to be positioned correctly or something like that.
Right.
With the center panel, you never really have to worry about that. And a lot of times it feels as though the chart designers kind of think about that. Frozen Ray, for instance.
Oh, yeah, Frozen Ray's a
Ray
great
expert. At the end of the song, where there's the section where it goes da 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 da, and you can spin around. Well, you can also kind of complete those sections using the center panel, and you don't have to spin, and you don't have to do anything crazy, and
So it's like
it's way easier.
Da 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 bop, da 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 bop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it turns it into like a complete, eighth note string.
Exactly. So I think this might be the last video we have for this.
Oh yeah, Tenda.
So we're back to da da da, right? But this is the expert instead. I think this is one of the most fantastic examples of ghost stepping to complete sections, because you really have everything here. You can see right now that for like 8 up arrows in a row, like don't just that's even on the beat and that's fine.
Yeah.
But for me, like I'm thinking in eighth notes and 16th notes. So like if I can turn a bass into bass, like if I'm alternating more like that, then it just makes a lot more sense to me.
Especially since there's eighth notes coming up immediately after.
Exactly. Yeah, you're sort of keeping on time with that.
And like what Roger said too, you can very well use the center panel. You don't have to use another arrow.
Yeah, you don't.
So actually, maybe that's better for beginners. Like beginners.
It's interesting to think about the center panel, because when you're first starting out, you say, don't ever use that thing.
Yeah.
Just don't think about it. Don't go back there. But then once you start getting up to the advanced techniques, you're like, okay, maybe you actually use the metal parts.
Yeah, that's true.
I like using the center panel for ghost stepping because it makes a different sound than the other panels.
Yeah.
And it kind of it
Mixes it up.
Yeah, it mixes it up, but also kind of like I'm sure people who've played the game a lot are very aware that like listening to your steps and hearing your steps is really important. And kind of like the fact that the center panel and the dead panels make a different sound is kind of like a cue to your brain. It kind of matches your brain up a lot better with the chart to know that it's a ghost step and it's not like a part of the song.
So yeah, I don't want to talk too much about da da da. Like we went through it a lot before, but this is I would just try to practice this chart and try to like fill out all these 16 sections, which kind of matching what I'm doing, because this is a pretty good example of like ways you can also trip up by like in the da 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 da. If you complete those and you're not cognizant of the fact that you're double stepping. If you don't double step, you'll actually like, sort of cross over a bunch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's a common mistake. If you want to try to avoid doing that, you have to be aware of how you're completing them.
So before we move on to shock arrows, I wanted to talk about one more thing about ghost stepping, which actually is something I noticed that you do, Roger, which is a lot of times you'll ghost step a note after like a run or something.
Yeah.
Even though it's like there's no notes after it, you're kind of doing it like you do it like even though there's nothing after it. So you're not actually adding notes in between. You're just adding notes at the end.
Yeah, a lot of times it makes more sense sometimes if you look at the rhythm of the chart, and they add awkward things in there to make you get grades, right?
Yeah.
So if you just kind of simplify the pattern, or even kind of like have fun with it and make your own stuff, it's kind of makes it easier sometimes.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, doesn't Chris have his HTFJ?
Oh yeah, that's a funny one. Yeah, he did like Remember You on DDR Extreme.
Who did?
Chris for life. He played Remember You and like added 12th notes everywhere, where so it's just like da 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 da, like, and it's actually very funny. I wouldn't recommend doing that for like a tournament or something, but it shows you sort of the limits to how far you can take something for it to make sense to you.
Yeah, I think actually everybody should watch that because it's funny, but it's also really interesting.
Yeah.
So I think it shows you, like the limits.
Yeah,
One
Sunny
thing-
does that too.
Yeah,
The
Sunny does that, yeah.
The last thing I want to bring up before we move on is if you're playing on something like Extreme, where you have boos in addition to goods and misses, you're actually going to be you have to be more aware of ghost stepping because there's a larger window for you to get a boo, whereas you might avoid it in something like DDR Ace. You might get a boo in something like DDR Extreme. So
Yeah.
just you actually have to be a lot more hesitant to ghost step in older versions of DDR. I remember I was trying to perfect full combo Dynamite Rave Oni on Extreme, and I for the longest time I had 0 greats and 1 boo because I just double stepped, or I ghost stepped in a part I shouldn't.
One last comment about ghost stepping is if you're having trouble doing it at all, slow songs are really good to learn this on because you're basically required to ghost step in order to time them correctly. So, like easier songs like After the Game of Love.
Oh,
or,
yeah. Let the Beat Hit 'Em.
Let the beat hit 'em. Let the beat hit 'em. If you play that, you basically have to add the notes.
Make it a whole 8th note stream.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
That's how the chart is.
Just jump the whole time.
Yeah, and-
8th notes.
And I really think bouncing on the freeze is probably the easiest thing to get started.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
There's no penalty to do it. It's pretty safe.
Yeah,
you would
unless
say.
your pads are really undersensitive.
Yeah.
Or you're like 100 pounds.
All right, so let's quickly go through our last technique that we want to talk about, which is shock arrows. It's kind of a pain point for
That's
a lot of
a
people,
tough
I
one.
think. Yeah, so it's like a lot of people. We want to talk about shock arrows because a lot of people were writing in and saying that they have trouble with it. And
Yeah.
wanted
I
advice.
personally do.
It fits in very nicely because Ishtar was just released, and that has a lot of shock arrows in the
Yeah.
challenge chart. So shock arrows, very basic history. They were introduced in X. They are like mines, except they sort of turn. If you hit them, they turn off, make the next few notes like invisible, and then everything sort of like the opacity comes back. And depending on the era that you're playing a shock arrow chart, it's only on challenge, so you don't have to worry about this if you don't play anything on challenge. Depending on when the chart was made, sometimes shock arrows are just like thrown in old like DRX charts for no reason. And now they're actually starting to learn to do them a little bit more properly. So right now we have a video of One-Sided Love, which is a chart in DDR 2014, pretty easy at only 12.
One of Jeff's favorites.
One of my favorite songs. God, I love this song. But basically, what this is actually doing is with the shock arrows, it forces you to treat the center panel as a 5th arrow.
Which is really fun.
It's a really neat idea. And so you can see here that it's actually a continuous 8th note stream as long as I use my right foot. That's when it's not being used as the quarter note. It's actually returning back to the center panel, and then everything just flows and works, which is something they keep doing. Ishtar is the same way, and I think the next video we have, which is another phase challenge, this is from DDR 2013, and here I have a slow-mo video showing a little bit, because these are actually much faster, so
Yeah.
you can really see, like, it can feel a little bit confusing of like, okay, well, I have to like jump off the entire pad and like get out of there so that I don't hit any of the shock arrows.
But you're not doing that here.
But really, the whole point of them, what it's trying to force you to do, is hit the center panel. So as long as you make sure that you do get off in like a reasonable amount of time, then you're actually fine. You don't hit the shock arrows, and the whole chart flows perfectly.
Yeah.
So they're starting to do this a little bit more. So this is an example. Ishtar Challenge is an example. But there are other charts where shock arrows sort of do force you to like jump up off all of the arrows, or you can sort of utilize the ghost stepping techniques we're talking about and even for those sections, treat the center panel as something to return to. So there's, in that sense, there's kind of two categories of shock arrow charts. And a lot of the old ones sort of fall into like the just get off everything. It doesn't really flow if you hit the center panel in a certain way.
Yeah.
Just get off there. And the next video we have is Top the Charts, which is, again, another, a more recent one. But you can see here, for the shock arrows that are here, except for those two that just passed, a lot of the times I'm just getting off the arrows because it's too much for me to do like jump center, jump center, jump center, jump center to avoid all of them.
It takes a lot of energy.
So I just sort of like lift up as high as I can. Again, I'm using the bar, so the techniques will be different if you're not using the bar. But because I'm using the bar, I can sort of like put a bunch of pressure on my arms and lift myself off the arrows so that I don't trigger anything. So it's sort of like almost on a chart by chart basis. You're going to have to figure out what works for you. If you do have sections like this where it's not obvious to use the center panel as a dead panel, you know, you can. I've experimented with both, and I kind of flip-flop back and forth between songs. Sometimes mid-song, I'll decide to go back in the center for a certain part, and then the same exact thing happens later, and I like just jump as high as I can. But good charts to practice with shock arrows for this sort of stuff. South Challenge from DDR 2013 is one of my favorite shock arrow charts. Things like Twinkle Heart. I always forget what the second.
You should mention the difficulties too.
Oh yeah. So Twinkle Heart is a 10. South is also a 10. So pretty good, like easy patterning, but it's just or you can go to Right on Time Challenge.
Yeah, Right on Time is a good one.
Yeah, that's just not actually. That's if you want to learn shock arrows, that's probably one of the best charts to learn. Experiment with that specifically because 150 is a nice like middle BPM where it's very feasible to either jump up entirely or return back to the center. So you can. Oh, what do we got? Oh, we got Right on Time. Yeah. So this is just like we'll see what Dr. D does here.
Let's go full screen.
Can we full screen the video? Oh.
There we go.
Those are the wrong ones. That's okay.
So it starts off pretty innocuously. It's just jumps, but it's like the whole chart is just nothing but jumps.
And
yes. So he's lifting up completely off of each arrow. He's not returning back to the center. For these, you sort of have to return back to the center.
He's kind of using the corner metal panels to prop himself up.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
Oh, there we go. So yeah, you can really like I would experiment with this song if you're at all rusty on shock arrows, just because there's so many different ways you can do this, and you're gonna have to find something that works for you. I think this more than anything else really does require a certain amount of like personific. What is it? Not
Personalization, I guess.
Personalization. That's the word.
This song's basically like Shock Arrow Special.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The air special.
So you notice Dr. D. He is doing the thing where he puts both feet in the center panel.
Yeah.
Quite a lot, but not for the ones where there's a lot of notes next to each other, I guess.
Yeah, you can see sometimes he's actually using one, like when there's just like a red and a blue, just da-da, he's actually using 1 foot for both of those. We just talked about the importance of alternating feet, but when you already have 1 foot on the center panel, or so you start off with both feet, if you can sort of just do like 1-2 with 1 foot, then you're not risking your other foot hitting a shock arrow. You already know it's safe on the center panel. So
Don't want to get shocked.
Don't get shocked.
Don't want to get shocked. So yeah, there's lots of different techniques, but hopefully that was kind of a good starter for. And you can keep asking, like you can tweet at me, funga_, tweet at the SF Evolved account.
Yeah, tweet at us now if there's any other techniques that you had questions about, or if you wanted some help with something. Let us know. We can talk about it right now.
Do you want to talk about Ishtar specifically?
Well, I mean, like Ishtar just does a very similar thing that another phase does, where it's pretty fast, and it has like left, right, and then shocks, and then like right, left shocks. So you do like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and you are sort of lifting up at each point. You could also, like, I was actually, if you watch my video of me doing Ishtar, I'm actually just have like my toes on the dead panel, and I'm just sort of like heels, and then I just like kind of lift back up. So I'm not actually like, I'm not ghost stepping there. I'm actually just sniping and seeing if I can get perfect. And somehow it worked out. So yeah, there's lots of different techniques. It's fun.
All right, so we're going to move on to questions and answers right before we close out the show. So we're going to start off with, we have a question from Jess, who asked, are some patterns, such as drills, on higher difficulties better executed if you slightly bend your knees, or is it a player's preference? So is this another thing that's kind of a personalization sort of question?
Yeah. Drill. If anyone knows me, they know I'm bad at drills.
I've got that problem too.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm the best person to ask about this, but I've found that I'm sort of bending. Like, I'm actually bending more of my upper body, doing some, like, more of the stream sections for drills, trying to actually treat drills as not their own thing. Because right now I actually have kind of some mental blocks, and I sort of treat drills as like, oh, I should try this differently. But really, when they're mixed into other stream stuff, I don't think about them nearly as often.
Yeah.
And I'm just sort of executing. And so I think I'm actually trying to, like, wire my brain differently to think drills are actually just streams on two arrows,
Yeah.
and there's nothing special about them. So maybe if we're using that logic to answer the question, like, if you're gonna bend your knees for streams, then you should bend your knees for drills, and if you don't, then you shouldn't.
I totally agree there.
I also think that if you're having trouble executing on things like drills, in my experience, I noticed that the problem tends to be weight distribution, where, like, I'll do drills and I'll have way too much of my weight on one side of my body and it's not in the middle. So really, you just kind of want to make sure that you're consistent with the way you're playing the rest of the game, I think.
Yeah. For me, I would say the same advice that I gave for runs. Make sure that you start the first arrow on time. It's even easier to get lost in timing with drills, I think.
It absolutely is.
So just...
People tend to rush them.
Yeah, people tend to rush them. But yeah, just make sure that you're hitting that first note on time. If you hit the first note on time, you're likely to hit the rest of them, get marvelouses on the rest of them. So next question we have is from Spendimian. It's a great name. What are some advanced techniques that you're currently struggling with? And what do you think is your best/most polished technique? Roger, you want to start? Interesting.
Right now, I'm struggling with fast crossovers, such as the ones in Come to Life Challenge. They're 180 BPM, 16th note run crossovers, where you just kind of gotta whip your body, like, from side to side really fast, and that's something I'm trying to execute right now. And I think the things that I'm good at are Marvelous Attack on
Yeah.
eighth notes. So
I think the thing I'm struggling most with right now is drills, or, you know, they do, like, it's weird because I'm good at streams, but I'm bad at drills.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm failing Endymion a lot because I get nervous and rush drills, and there are a lot of them in that song. So when I tell myself to slow down and I actually, like, execute just like I would a stream, then I pass the song. And
it's amazing how much you have to talk to yourself while you're playing DDR.
I talk to myself so much, like,
there's
just
just
slow down.
sentences
Slow
just
down.
going on.
Yeah. And something I'm thinking the most polished at, I think I'm very good. I think, like, streams in general, I think I'm just, like, I can MA streams for days. And, like, I'm gonna get Common Break at some point, but I've gotten one perfect on it twice. Like, I've done Come to Life, MFC that on Expert. So
Still
it's, like,
crazy.
So it's like at a certain point, like especially up to 180 or 190, like, streams is just like, it doesn't matter if it's 180 or if it's 140. Like, I'm just executing in the same way, just like sped up versions. So yeah, that's probably my most polished technique.
Yeah, for myself, I'd say the thing I'm struggling with the most right now is probably timing changes. So speed ups, slow downs, stops. I don't know, I just feel like I can play a song, like, over and over again and still never get it. So what I'm doing to kind of help with that is I'm listening to the song just on my, like, iPhone with headphones, not looking at the chart, not trying to play the game, and just trying to, like, really understand the song. And it's actually helping quite a lot, because now the slowdowns and the speed ups are much more predictable. It just feels like a natural thing now.
Yeah, studying. I
Studying,
feel like
yeah.
it's crazy how important studying is for a video game.
I think it's one of the unique things about DDR. And I think one of the things I'm good at, actually, I think I'm pretty good at drills. And it's because,
Nice.
I think it's mostly because my favorite songs have had drills in them. And runs too. Like I love I'm So Happy is one of my favorite songs on DDR. And I played the heck out of that song. And just, I don't know, I try to give my advice about runs and drills, and that's what helped me a lot.
We were just talking about Chaos Eater earlier.
Yeah, Dalton says we were talking about Chaos Eater.
Yeah, Chaos Eater's got really fast drills.
Oh yeah, if
It's-
you want,
it's
so
pretty
yeah,
tough.
you should try that if you want to get good at drills, or Nako ga Kisto, which is
Construction.
the Construction Girl
Girl.
song,
It's the bane of my existence.
the 16 on
Yeah.
challenge. Yeah, when I slow down on that song, I can get 10 perfects. But when
Horatio too, right?
Horatio, yeah, for 160, that's good. Trying to think of anything.
How to eat rice? Or
The Okome Rice song.
yeah, that's a hard
Yeah,
one.
kind
Are
of.
those drills or is that
Some of them are.
Yeah, some of them are drills, for sure.
There's a lot. I mean, 16 folder mainly.
16 folder, yeah. I mean, that's kind of like what we're getting at is that if you want to get good at 16s, you have to master drills.
Yeah.
And runs. So hopefully our advice helped you. So I think that's all we've got for tonight. I just wanted to give a shout out to Fraxtal. Thanks for letting us use your song in the intro and the outro. And yeah, that's all. So
yeah,
thanks.
but he has a new EP out.
He has a new
check
EP.
out the new EP.
Check out SoundCloud.
It's great.
Fanlink.to/voyage or Bandcamp. So yeah, that's all we've got for you. So thanks for watching and thank you for playing.